The classroom was silent, but not the kind of silence that felt safe. It was heavy, sharp, almost dangerous. Every student sat tensely, their eyes fixed on front of the room. The walls of the chamber were metal, cold, and unyielding, reflecting the harsh light from the overhead panels. Outside, the wind howled across the Deathworld landscape, carrying dust and ash, a reminder that this planet did not forgive weakness. At the front of the room stood Krylox, the alien teacher. His arms were long, covered within hard scales that gleamed under the lights. His eyes, black and endless, seemed to peer straight into a person's soul. Every student in the room knew his reputation. He was feared, respected, and hated in equal measure. One slap from him could bruise a student for weeks. A single misstep under his instruction could mean death. But today, something different stirred in the room. Lara, the Deathworld girl, sat quietly in the third row, her small frame coiled like a spring. Her skin was tanned and tough from years surviving this planet's deadly storms. Her hands rested on the desk, fingers twitching, ready to react. Her dark eyes met Krylox's piercing gaze without flinching. While other students had learned to lower their heads and obey, Lara had never been afraid. "Focus!" Krylox barked, his voice like metal scraping on metal. "Again! Why is it so hard for you to learn this lesson?" Lara's brow furrowed. She had tried. She had really tried. But the lesson was brutal. Survival techniques that required agility, intelligence, and absolute fearlessness. Mistakes here were not just embarrassing. They were dangerous. I understand," she said carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you?" Krylox snapped. He moved closer, the room shrinking with his presence. "Your kind thinks you can survive everything. But here you will fail. You will break." The other students flinched. Some whispered to each other. Humans were rare on this planet, and even rarer in this class. Most thought of humans as fragile, weak, incapable of understanding the harsh realities of Deathworld life. Lara's jaw tightened. "I will not break," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Silence!" Krylox bellowed. He gestured sharply, and a holographic projection of the lesson floated above the desk. It showed a simulation of a deadly predator, faster and stronger than any human. Students were expected to react, predict, and survive without hesitation. Lara inhaled deeply. She had faced real predators on this world, creatures that could tear a grown alien in seconds. She had lived, and yet, here she was, facing a teacher who seemed more terrifying than any predator outside. "Demonstrate," Krylox ordered. Lara stepped forward, her boots clicking on the metal floor. The predator appeared in the hologram, moving with deadly precision. The other students watched anxiously. Some had tried this lesson and failed. The punishment for failure was not just embarrassment. It was a painful shock administered to the floor plates. Lara's hands moved instinctively, her mind calculating. She dodged, rolled, and pivoted, trying to anticipate the predator's attack. She was fast, smarter than most expected. For a moment, she almost had it. But then she slipped. A misstep, a small mistake. Not fatal, not deadly, but enough. Krylox's eyes narrowed. Without warning, he reached forward and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed in the chamber like a gunshot. Students gasped. Some leaned back, shielding themselves instinctively, as if the air itself could strike. Lara staggered but did not fall. She raised her hand to her cheek, feeling the sting. Her ears rang, but her mind was sharp. Anger flared inside her, hot and burning. It was not just pain, it was the insult to her skill, her strength, her humanity. The room was frozen. No one had ever seen a student slapped by Krylox and continue standing without fear. Humans, it seemed, did not understand fear the same way aliens did. Krylox stepped back, clearly expecting submission. He was wrong. Lara's eyes locked onto his. A quiet fire burned there. "You should have thought before you struck me," she said, her voice calm but steady. The room buzzed with tension. Even Krylox paused. He had been challenged before, but never like this. Never by a human. "Do you think your kind can survive here?" Krylox sneered. "Do you think you can endure what this world throws at you? You are weak, fragile, I am not weak, Lara replied, her tone unwavering. I survive. I always survive. The alien teacher's claws flexed, his anger growing. Enough talk, he roared. Do it again or face the consequences. Lara took a deep breath, centering herself. Every muscle in her body tensed, ready. She stepped back onto the simulation platform. The predator moved again, faster, sharper. Her mind analyzed every detail. The timing of the strike, the path of the attack, the weakness in the hologram's movement. She moved, faster than Krylox expected. She ducked under the strike, rolled to the side, and landed lightly on her feet. She dodged again, countered instinctively, and for the first time, the predator faltered. The other students watched in awe. The human moved with grace and precision no alien student could match. Krylox's jaw tightened. His pride hurt more than his authority. Humans were supposed to be fragile, unfit for this world. Yet this girl, was proving him wrong. You cheated, he shouted, trying to regain control. I did not cheat, Lara said simply. I learned. For a brief moment, the room was silent. Then, a whisper spread among the students. She's different. Krylox's hands clenched into fists. He had underestimated humans before. But this was something else entirely. His authority demanded obedience. Yet the girl stood before him, unshaken, defiant. He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. Do you think your strength impresses me? You are nothing here. I am everything, she replied softly, her eyes flashing. You just haven't seen it yet. Krylox's patience snapped. With a growl, he raised his arm to strike her again. But this time, Lara was ready. She moved with lightning speed, sidestepping, pivoting, and twisting. Her small body was almost impossible to hit. The room seemed to shrink around her movements, her shadow dancing across the walls. The other students gasped. No one had seen a human move like this. Krylox's strikes were fast, precise, but Lara's speed, intuition, and experience on the Deathworld gave her the edge. She dodged every blow, countering instinctively. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The teacher's clawed hand swung toward her face, and she caught it. The room went dead silent. Lara looked up at him, eyes calm. Her strength, her control, her defiance. It all radiated from her small frame. Krylox stared in disbelief. He had never been challenged like this before. Not by a student. Not by anyone. You, he growled, his voice trembling slightly. You will regret this. Lara smiled faintly. I doubt it, she said. The tension in the room was electric. Every student leaned forward, watching, waiting. They could feel the shift in power, the moment when a human defied expectations, shattered assumptions, and made an alien teacher doubt himself. Krylox's anger was visible now, rising like a storm. He lunged faster, stronger. But Lara moved with the calm of someone who had faced death countless times. She ducked, rolled, and pivoted, her movements fluid, deadly, precise. The predator's simulation flickered in the air, mirroring her movements. She had turned a lesson into a dance of survival, skill, and instinct. And the teacher? He was losing. A low, painful sound came from Krylox. His arm twisted awkwardly, and he stumbled back. Lara's eyes widened slightly, but she did not pause. The power, the force, the sheer human resilience was incredible. In seconds, she had not only survived, but gained the upper hand. The class was frozen. They had never seen such a thing. A human, small, unassuming, had defied and overpowered a fearsome alien teacher. Lara stepped back, breathing evenly. Her face was calm, composed. The room still hummed with tension, but the whispers had changed. Awe, respect, fear, all mingling together. Krylox's pride was shattered, his authority questioned, and in that moment, something shifted in the Deathworld girl. She knew this was only the beginning. The unexpected turning point had arrived, and the galaxy, in its cruel and unforgiving ways, would soon learn that humans were not just survivors. They were forces to be reckoned with. The classroom was still tense from the earlier confrontation. Krylox sat back, his arm throbbing, and his eyes darted nervously toward Lara. Every muscle in his alien body was coiled like a spring, ready to strike, yet uncertain. The other students stared, frozen between fear and awe. No one had ever seen a human face him without trembling, and certainly no one had ever seen him falter. Lara adjusted her stance, her boots softly scraping the floor. Her dark eyes scanned the room, then locked on the holographic predator again. She knew the lesson wasn't over, not by a long shot. Survival wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about using it, about turning it into strength. Do you think you can survive against me? Krylox hissed, rising to his full height. His shadow loomed over her, massive and intimidating. I will show you what real strength looks like. I already know what strength is, Lara replied, her voice quiet but firm. It's not just muscle. It's mind. It's heart. It's survival. A faint whisper ran through the room. Humans! The word carried on now, not doubt. Krylox growled and lunged forward, his claws aimed straight for Lara, each movement precise and deadly. The other students watched, fearing a sudden strike. But Lara moved first. She twisted her body, rolling under his attack, and landed lightly behind him. The alien spun, his tail whipping through the air. She barely dodged, feeling the air push her hair back. Each strike was faster than the last, more aggressive, more powerful. But she was faster, smarter. Every move she made was calculated, instinctive, as if the very environment of the Deathworld flowed through her veins. Her small frame darted like a shadow, almost impossible to target. Krylox's eyes widened. He had faced the strongest of aliens, but none moved like this. The humans, he realized, were different. He had underestimated them. You rely on tricks. Krylox shouted. You cannot defeat raw power. Power without control is useless. Lara said calmly, rolling under his next strike and sweeping her leg against his knee. Krylox stumbled slightly, unprepared. She kept moving, using his momentum against him. The students watched in awe. Murmurs filled the room. She's faster than him. She's stronger than we thought. But Lara didn't pause to notice. She had learned long ago that hesitation could kill. Every second counted. Every move could mean life or death. The predator hologram flickered, synchronized with her movements, but she wasn't focusing on it. She was watching the teacher, observing, learning. Krylox's attacks became more frenzied, faster, more desperate. He was used to control, used to fear, used to unquestioned authority. But Lara, she refused to obey. She refused to fear. And that drove him mad. With a sharp twist, she ducked under his swing and delivered a precise strike to his midsection. Not enough to kill, but enough to push him back. He staggered, eyes wide, claws quivering. Impossible, he roared. You are human. Yes, she said simply. And humans survive. Always. The other students were whispering now, almost afraid to breathe. They had learned long ago that humans were fragile. But this girl was rewriting everything they thought they knew. Her movements, her resilience, her control were beyond anything any alien could imagine. Krylox tried again, faster, more furious. He lashed out with a clawed hand aimed at her shoulder. Lara twisted her body, grabbed his arm mid-swing, and pushed with all her strength. The sound of cracking echoed through the chamber. Krylox cried out in pain. The students gasped. Some even stood, eyes wide. They had never heard their teacher cry out like that. Some of the aliens whispered to each other. She's human, she broke him. But Lara didn't stop. She had more power than anyone in the room realized. She used her weight, her speed, her instinct, and her survival skills honed over years of living on a death world. Every move was precise, calculated. Every attack, a lesson in human adaptability. Krylox swung again, but this time she anticipated it. She sidestepped, grabbed his arm, twisted, and with a sudden force, slammed him to the floor. The metal of the classroom vibrated under the impact. Students backed away, eyes wide. No one had ever seen an alien teacher fall. Enough! Krylox gasped, pain and shock mixing in his voice. You will regret this. You already have, Lara said, standing tall, her chest rising and falling steadily. She was calm, collected, unshaken. Her face showed no fear, only focus. The room seemed to shrink around her presence, as if the air itself respected her strength. The other students were frozen, unsure whether to cheer, fear, or flee. They had witnessed something they could never unsee, a human standing against the strongest teacher in the galaxy and gaining the upper hand. Krylock struggled to rise, but every movement seemed slower, weaker. Lara took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. She didn't need to attack anymore. Her power wasn't in her strength alone. It was in her will, her determination, her refusal to be subdued. "Do you understand now?" she asked quietly, almost gently. "Humans are not weak. Humans survive. Always." He glared at her, pride wounded, authority shattered. For the first time, he felt uncertainty. Fear, even. And in that moment, the Deathworld girl's presence grew even larger in the eyes of every student in the room. She wasn't just human. She was unstoppable. A sudden alert beeped from the classroom console. The simulation had detected abnormal patterns. The Predator hologram flared, ready for automatic intervention. But Lara ignored it. She didn't need the hologram. She had already won. Krylox, seething, tried one last desperate attack. He lunged with both arms, claws aimed to pin her. Lara jumped, twisted midair, and landed behind him. With a swift motion, she grabbed his arm again, twisting it sharply. The sound of cracking filled the room. The alien teacher howled, staggering backward, finally clutching his broken arm. Silence fell. Absolute, heavy silence. The students slowly exhaled, whispers rising into the air. She did it. Lara stood in the middle of the room, her chest rising and falling, her eyes sharp, her stance ready. She hadn't just survived. She had dominated. Every movement, every instinct, every lesson from the Deathworld had prepared her for this moment, and she had proven something vital. Humans, no matter how small, no matter how underestimated, could rise to any challenge. Krylox fell to his knees, humiliated, furious, and defeated. You are different," he managed to growl. "I am human," she said simply. "And humans survive. Always." The other students watched, some with fear, some with awe. They had witnessed something that would change their understanding of humans forever. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't weak. She was something else entirely, a force to be reckoned with. Lara's eyes scanned the room one last time before stepping off the platform. Her boots clicked softly against the metal floor. Every step carried confidence, calm, and a silent message. "Do not underestimate me." Even the harsh winds outside the Deathworld's windows seemed to pause, as if acknowledging her victory. Krylox glared at her, his pride wounded, his authority shattered. But even in his pain, he knew he had underestimated humans. And that mistake would not be forgotten. The Deathworld girl had shown the galaxy that humans were not just survivors. They were unpredictable, unstoppable, and dangerous when provoked. And for the first time in the classroom's history, a human had changed the rules of the game. The whispers grew louder as she left the room. "We were wrong about humans, so very wrong." And somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, that whisper would travel further than anyone could imagine. The unexpected power of humans had been revealed. And it would not be the last time. The classroom still buzzed with tension, though the walls remained silent witnesses. The other students watched with wide eyes, some frozen in disbelief, some whispering about the human who had shattered the authority of their strongest teacher. Krylock sat on the floor, his broken arm throbbing, but his pride hurt far more than his body. "Enough!" he growled through gritted teeth, trying to force himself to stand. "This is not over." Lara didn't flinch. She stood in the center of the room, calm, her dark eyes scanning the alien teacher. Every move he made now was slower, more cautious. The arrogance that had ruled his class was gone, replaced by something more dangerous. Fear. The air in the room seemed to tighten around them. Each student felt it, even the bravest alien. Humans had always been underestimated, but Lara was proving just how wrong that assumption could be. "You will regret this," Krylox hissed, attempting to regain his authority. His claws flexed, ready for attack. "I doubt it," Lara said simply. Her voice was soft, almost calm, but it carried a weight that made even the strongest aliens in the room step back. Krylox lunged, faster than before, his movement sharp and deadly. Lara anticipated each strike. She ducked, rolled, and twisted in ways that no alien could predict. Her survival instincts, honed by years on the Deathworld, guided her. Every motion was precise. Every reaction was instinctive. She wasn't just dodging. She was learning, adapting, and exploiting every weakness. The alien teacher strikes came in a relentless storm. Claws, tail, and brute force, all designed to overpower and intimidate. But Lara moved like water, fluid, unpredictable. Her small frame darted, her hands and feet striking when necessary, her mind always 3 steps ahead. With a sudden twist, she grabbed his claw mid-swing, yanking him off balance. Krylock stumbled, his weight thrown forward. In one motion, Lara kicked off the floor, propelling herself forward and driving him back into a wall. The metal groaned under the impact. Students gasped, some even shielding their faces from the shockwave of force. Krylock's growled, his black eyes wide with shock. He had faced the most dangerous predators of this death world, yet he had never met a student who could turn his own strength against him. And now, the human was dominating. "You," he hissed, struggling to regain his footing. "You are different." "Yes," Lara said, her tone calm. "I am human, and humans survive. Always." Krylox lunged again, but this time, Lara was ready. She dodged, rolled, and swept her leg, hitting the side of his knee. The sound of cracking echoed through the classroom. Krylox let out a howl of pain, staggering backward. The students stared, unable to believe their eyes. The teacher, the feared Krylox, the master of this class, had been humbled by a human. Lara didn't pause. She moved like a shadow, her small frame slipping around him, striking when needed. Her hands found his joints, twisting, leveraging, using his own weight and strength against him. With each move, Krylock struggled more, his confidence crumbling with every second. "You think you can beat me?" he roared, trying to lash out with both claws. "You are nothing." "I am everything," Lara said quietly. She ducked under his strike, grabbed his arm again, and twisted sharply. A loud snap echoed through the room. Krylox cried out, staggering to one knee, clutching his broken arm. The classroom fell silent. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Students couldn't believe what they were witnessing. A human, small and seemingly fragile, had not just survived. She had taken control. She had broken the strongest teacher in the room, using skill, intelligence, and raw determination. Krylox glared at her, rage and pain mingling in his eyes. "This is impossible. You cannot beat me." "I already have," Lara said simply. She stepped back, keeping her distance but maintaining complete control over the room. Every movement of hers was deliberate, confident. She radiated strength, calm, and an unshakable will. The other students were whispering now, almost afraid to speak too loudly. The word human carried a new weight. They had always underestimated humans, thinking them weak and fragile. But Lara had changed everything. She wasn't just a student. She was a force of nature, a reminder that humans could survive, adapt, and dominate even in the harshest conditions. Krylox tried again, but every movement was slower, more cautious. He lunged with his tail, tried to swing his claws, but Lara anticipated every strike. She dodged, rolled, and struck back with precise, calculated force. With a sudden move, she twisted his arm fully, sending him crashing to the floor once more. The metal floor shook under the impact. The students gasped. No one had ever seen such a display of human power. Lara wasn't just strong. She was unstoppable, a combination of intelligence, skill, and pure willpower. Krylox lay on the floor, breathing heavily, unable to rise. His pride was shattered, his authority destroyed. Lara stood over him, calm, composed, and completely in control. "You will regret this," he hissed, though now his voice lacked the confidence it once had. "I doubt it," she replied. Her voice was steady, almost gentle, but it carried the power of someone who had faced death countless times and always survived. The classroom was silent. Every student watched, some in awe, some in fear. They had seen something extraordinary. A human had taken down the strongest teacher, proving that humans were not just survivors. They were something far more. Lara stepped back, giving him space. Her eyes scanned the room, meeting the gaze of every student. Some nodded subtly, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. Others just stared, unable to comprehend what they had seen. Krylock struggled to rise, but every movement caused pain. He looked at Lara, his expression a mix of anger, shock, and something else. Respect, though he would never admit it. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said finally, his voice low. "This cannot be—" "Yes," Lara said simply. "Humans are stronger than you think. We survive. Always." The other students whispered among themselves. The lesson had changed. The fear of the human was no longer about weakness. It was about unpredictability, skill, and power. Lara had proven that humans were not to be underestimated. Krylox glared at her, knowing that he had underestimated humans, and that mistake had cost him everything, his pride as authority and control of the classroom. Lara had shown him the truth. Humans were dangerous, not because of brute strength, but because of their intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. The wind outside seemed to echo the shift inside the classroom. The harsh Deathworld had forged a student unlike any other, a human who could not be broken. Lara's eyes scanned the room one last time. She knew this was only the beginning. Her strength had been revealed, and the galaxy would take notice. Humans were no longer the underdogs. They were a force to be reckoned with. Krylox groaned in pain, unable to rise. His pride shattered. He knew he had lost. Not just a battle, but the lesson he had tried to impose. Lara had rewritten the rules, showing that humans were unpredictable, unstoppable, and dangerous. The students looked at her differently now. She was no longer just a classmate. She was a symbol of human power, skill, and resilience. A reminder that no matter the odds, humans could survive, adapt, and dominate. Lara stepped out of the simulation area, her boots clicking softly on the metal floor. Every movement carried confidence, calm, and silent warning. "Do not underestimate me." The classroom remained silent, the tension thick, even as she walked away. Krylox lay on the floor, broken, humbled, and furious. He had learned a lesson he would never forget. Humans were not just survivors. They were forces of nature, unpredictable and unstoppable. And as Lara left the classroom, the whispers spread. We were wrong about humans. So very wrong. Somewhere, far beyond the walls of the Deathworld, that message would reach the ears of others. Humans were no longer to be underestimated. And the galaxy would soon learn that when humans fought, they did not just survive. They conquered. The classroom was silent, but it wasn't the ordinary silence of tense anticipation. It was a kind of silence that carried awe, fear, and respect all at once. Krylox, the feared alien teacher, lay on the floor, clutching his broken arm. His black eyes, once full of pride and authority, now shimmered with disbelief and pain. He had never imagined that a human could not only survive his lessons, but dominate him completely. Lara stood in the center of the room, her chest rising and falling steadily. She wasn't tired. She wasn't scared. Her dark eyes scanned the room, calm and calculating, as if the entire classroom belonged to her now. Every student felt it. The presence of someone who could not be challenged, someone who could turn fear into strength, weakness into opportunity. Humans are dangerous, one whispered quietly, unable to hide the awe in his voice. Others nodded silently. The word spread through the room like wildfire. Humans had always been underestimated, considered fragile, incapable of surviving the harshest conditions of the Deathworld. But Lara had proven them wrong. Krylox groaned and tried to rise. Pain seared through his arm and his pride. He was not used to defeat. Authority was everything to him. Yet here he was, humbled by a human girl. You've gone too far," he hissed, attempting to drag himself up. "I've only done what was necessary," Lara replied simply. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word carried power. "I survive. I adapt. I win. That's what humans do." The other students watched her, some in disbelief, some in quiet admiration. They had never seen such confidence, such control, such raw human strength. Lara wasn't just a student anymore. She was a symbol, a living demonstration of the power humans could wield when underestimated. A tense moment passed. Krylox's black eyes darted around, realizing he could not regain control immediately. His authority in the classroom had been shattered. The students, who had once trembled at his presence, now looked at him with cautious curiosity. A few aliens whispered to one another, try and process the reality. A human had defeated their strongest teacher. Krylox finally spoke, his voice low, tinged with both anger and an unspoken respect. This cannot stay hidden. If others learn, if the council learns, his voice faltered. Even he knew the consequences could reach far beyond his classroom. Humans were unpredictable, and their strength was underestimated across the galaxy. Lara's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the ripple of fear in his words. Let them learn, she said softly. Let them see the truth. Humans survive. Humans adapt. Humans fight. Always. The classroom door opened suddenly, and the head of the academy stepped in, an imposing figure, tall and armored. The alien leader of the Deathworld's education system had arrived after hearing the commotion. He paused, surveying the scene, the broken teacher, the silent students, and Lara standing calm and unshaken. What happened here? The head demanded, his voice booming. The other students shuffled nervously. They feared reprimand, but also feared telling the truth. Krylox tried to speak first, but his voice cracked. The human, she defeated you, Lara said simply, cutting him off. She is not weak. She is human, and humans survive. The room fell silent again. The head of the academy tilted his massive head, studying her. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. His eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with calculation. Humans were rare. They were unpredictable. They were dangerous. And this human, this small girl, had proven that beyond any doubt. Yushi, what is her name? The head finally asked, his voice low. Lara, one of the students whispered. Lara, the head repeated, tasting the word. A human on the Deathworld defying the strongest teacher in front of witnesses. He paused, deep in thought. This cannot be ignored. Lara remained calm, almost as if she had expected this. She did not bow, did not apologize, did not explain. She had done nothing wrong in her eyes. She had survived. She had conquered. That was all that mattered. The students exchanged glances, some worried about what would happen next. But Lara's calm confidence reassured them. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not weak. Humans were unpredictable. And she had just proven it. The head of the academy finally spoke again. Krylox, your failure will be noted. His eyes flicked to the broken alien teacher. And this human, she will be observed. Her actions unprecedented. We will need to report this to the council. Krylox growled lowly, his pride in tatters. He had been defeated, humiliated, and his reputation would bear the mark of this human girl. He realized now that the galaxy's understanding of humans was far too limited. Humans were survivors, fighters, unstoppable, and Lara was living proof. Lara said nothing, only nodded slightly. She knew the ripple of her actions would spread far beyond this classroom. The whispers of her strength, her skill, and her resilience would reach places she had never imagined. Humans were rare, but now they were no longer underestimated. The students slowly returned to their seats, still shaken but inspired. Some whispered to each other, wondering if they could ever hope to match such power. Others simply stared, silently respecting the human who had changed their entire perception of strength. Outside the classroom, the wind howled across the Deathworld, shaking the metal walls. It was a harsh world, unforgiving and brutal. But Lara had survived it all. She had faced the strongest alien teacher, adapted his attacks, and emerged victorious. The planet itself seemed to acknowledge her dominance, as if the harsh winds and relentless storms recognized the strength of one who could survive them. Krylox lay on the floor, groaning, struggling with his broken arm. He realized bitterly that he had underestimated humans, and that mistake would be remembered. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and Lara had shown them all why. The head of the academy finally left, leaving the students to process the events. Whispers filled the room. She's human, she's unstoppable. Lara walked out of the classroom slowly, each step deliberate, calm, and confident. The other students followed with cautious eyes. Some inspired, some afraid, all changed forever. Outside, The Deathworld sun blazed harshly over the barren landscape. Lara's boots crunched over rocks and sand as she moved. She looked up at the sky, dark and stormy, and smiled faintly. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and enemies, but humans survived. Her mind already raced ahead, thinking about what would come next. If a classroom could not break her, what could? If a teacher, trained and feared across the planet, could not defeat her, what challenges awaited her in the galaxy beyond? She knew one thing for certain. The story of humans would spread. Across planets, across species, across stars. Humans would be feared, respected, and remembered. And she had just begun. Somewhere, far away, across the galaxies, whispers began to travel. Reports of a human who defied the strongest aliens on a death world. A girl who broke the rules, broke bones, and broke assumptions. Her reputation would grow, and soon, no one would dare underestimate humans again. And Lara, the Deathworld girl, walked on, calm, strong, unyielding, and ready for whatever the galaxy dared to throw at her next. The unexpected power of humans had been revealed. The galaxy would never forget it. And Lara's journey was only beginning. Her legend, small but deadly, was just starting to take shape.